He never let strangers into his life, not since he was old enough to realize that people wanted his money more than his love. Lucas Maddox, 33 years old, king of Maddox Maritime, the largest private shipping empire on the West Coast, had built his penthouse like a fortress and his heart like a vault. People admired him, feared him, some even worshipped him. But no one really knew him, and that was exactly how he liked it. Until that night. It was nearly midnight when Lucas stepped off the private elevator. He had just flown back from Singapore on a last-minute deal. He should have been exhausted, numb to the world, but something in the silence of his penthouse made his pulse tighten. There was a sound he did not expect, a soft scraping, almost like someone was scrubbing the floor. He paused by the kitchen island, set down his leather briefcase and listened. He could hear his own heartbeat louder than that tiny sound. He moved deeper into the living room, lights spilling over marble floors so clean they reflected the skyline. Then he saw her. She was on her knees near the tall glass windows, a rag in one hand, a small bucket by her side. Her hair was dark, falling loose from a cheap elastic tie. She wore an oversized housekeeping uniform that looked one size too big. Her sneakers were old and scuffed. She looked up when she felt his eyes on her. For a second, the world seemed to tilt under his feet. She froze. So did he. "Hello?" Her voice was soft, barely above a whisper. "I am sorry, I did not know you were home tonight." Lucas did not answer immediately. He was trying to understand why this felt wrong. No one was supposed to be in his penthouse at this hour. His regular staff had strict schedules. No surprises, no intrusions. But here she was. "Who are you?" His voice came out lower than he meant, cold, maybe too cold. The girl pushed herself upright, brushing her hands on her uniform. "I'm Isabella Cruz, the new cleaner. I just started tonight." Lucas narrowed his eyes. He almost called for security, but stopped himself. There was something in the way she avoided his gaze, like she was terrified of being seen too closely. "You were hired by whom?" He stepped closer, noting the tiny tremor in her fingers as she held the cleaning rag. "The agency, Clean Spark. They said the last lady was on leave." She kept her eyes down, shoulders small. "I will finish quickly, I promise. I will not disturb you." For some reason, that word, disturb, hung in the air like smoke. Lucas studied her a moment longer, a stranger in his sanctuary. Any other day, he would have barked an order, told her to leave, but tonight he did not. Maybe it was the way her voice cracked, or the way she clutched the rag like it was armor. "You are cleaning this late at night, yes?" She dared to meet his eyes for a second, and in that second, he saw it, a flash of something raw, worry, fear, something more. Lucas let out a slow breath. He gestured toward the hallway. "Do not touch anything in the study. Do not go upstairs. Do not come back tomorrow without clearance." She nodded fast, relief washing over her face. "Thank you. I will not." She turned back to the window, dipping the rag into the bucket again. Lucas stood there longer than he should have, watching her shoulders move in small circles as she wiped a tiny stain that probably did not exist. He felt something unfamiliar twist inside his chest, a stranger on his floor, and yet he was the one who felt exposed. Lucas did not usually notice the people who cleaned his penthouse. They came and went like silent ghosts, careful not to touch the wrong things or breathe too loudly. That was the rule, the unspoken contract everyone understood. Yet Isabella Cruz was already breaking that rule just by existing in his space at this hour. The next morning, Lucas found himself standing by the glass wall of his office, looking down at the street below while the sun rose over the city. He should have been reviewing port numbers, shipping manifests, and merger reports. Instead, his mind kept drifting back to the image of a girl kneeling by his windows, scrubbing invisible stains as if she could wipe away the entire world outside. He called his head of staff, asked about the new cleaner. The woman confirmed what Isabella had said, hired through Clean Spark on short notice because his usual housekeeper, Marla, was on maternity leave. Nothing suspicious, just a girl who needed work badly enough to agree to night shifts in a place like this. Lucas gave a clipped thanks and hung up. He told himself that was the end of it. But even as he sat at his polished walnut desk and signed documents worth millions, a single line stuck in his mind. She said, "I will not disturb you." Yet here she was, doing exactly that without trying. Isabella did not expect to see the owner again that week. She had worked for rich people before, the type who never looked twice at the people who polished their floors or ironed their suits. To her, Lucas Maddox was supposed to be like that too. Just another name on a list, another door to unlock, another mess to wipe clean. But when she stepped into the penthouse again 2 nights later, he was there. He stood barefoot in sweatpants and a black shirt, leaning against the kitchen counter with a mug of coffee. For a moment she thought about turning around and pretending she had come to the wrong floor. She did not. She could not afford to lose this job. "You work late," he said without looking at her, his eyes focused on the steam curling from his mug. She clutched the handle of her supply cart tighter. "It is the only shift they offered." He nodded once, like that explained everything. Maybe it did. He did not say another word as she moved around the living room, dusting the shelves, fluffing the expensive cushions no one ever sat on. Once or twice, she felt his eyes on her back, but when she turned, he was gone, melted into the shadows of his vast, silent home. Lucas watched her from his study, door half open. He told himself he was only making sure she stayed where she was supposed to stay, that she did not wander into the locked storage, that she did not steal. But that was a lie, and he hated lies, especially the ones he told himself. He studied the way she moved, quiet but precise, how she stood on her tiptoes to reach the highest corners, how her hair slipped from its tie and brushed her neck. It should not have meant anything. He did not know her. She was a maid. She was no one. Downstairs, Isabella hummed under her breath, a habit from when she was little and alone at night, helping her mother clean a pharmacy back home in Tijuana. It made the silence softer, less hungry. She did not know the man behind the study door was listening to every note. She did not know her soft humming was digging under a wall he had spent years building. She did not belong here, in this tower of glass and money. She knew it the second she stepped inside on her first night. Everything gleamed like it cost more than her family's entire life. Marble floors, black granite counters, a rooftop solarium filled with imported plants that needed more care than she did. Lucas Maddox lived like a king, but alone, in a house that did not feel like a home. In her small apartment in Queens, Isabella slept on a twin mattress beside her mother's bed, an oxygen machine humming in the corner. Her younger brother, Mateo, slept on the couch. Every dollar she earned went to rent, hospital bills, and Mateo's school lunch cards. There was never enough. That was why she could not lose this job, why she said yes when CleanSpark called about the Maddox penthouse. She did not want to be here at midnight, scrubbing floors for a man who would not even see her, but she had no choice. Lucas watched her slip her coat on when she finished. She glanced once at the giant windows, the city lights blinking below like stars trapped in a glass jar. For a second, she looked like she wanted to say something. She didn't. She just left, soft footsteps swallowed by the hallway. Lucas Maddox, 33, untouchable, went back to his empty kitchen and poured himself another coffee he did not even want. In his head, her soft voice stayed behind, humming a song only she seemed to know. 2 nights later, Lucas sat in a dark corner of his rooftop solarium, a glass of bourbon balanced on his knee. Outside the glass walls, the city hummed under the night sky, but inside the world was still. He told himself he was here to think. In truth, he was waiting. He knew Isabella would come tonight. She always came after 11, pushing her small cart, her sneakers squeaking softly against the marble. He heard her before he saw her, the low creak of the service door, the clink of a spray bottle against metal. She moved like a shadow, but he knew exactly where she was, even when he could not see her. Isabella did not see him at first. She slipped off her coat and folded it neatly over her cart. She pulled her hair into a loose knot, humming that same quiet tune. Lucas did not recognize the melody but realized he wanted to hear it again. He told himself it was only curiosity. She bent over the low glass tables, wiping invisible fingerprints, her small hands careful, precise. When she turned, her eyes caught his shape in the half-light. She froze. "Sorry, I did not see you there. I can come back later." She started to move toward her cart, but he shook his head. "It is fine, you can finish." She hesitated, then returned to work, careful to keep a polite distance. Lucas studied her in silence. She wore the same oversized uniform, sleeves rolled just above her elbows, wrists thin and bare except for a fraying red thread bracelet. He wondered about that thread, what promise it held together. He should have left, gone back to his study, called it a night, but instead he asked, "Where are you from?" She glanced at him, surprised by the question. "Mexico," she said. "Baja California. My family came when I was little." She waited, as if expecting him to end the conversation there. He did not. "Family, here." She nodded. "My mother, my brother, just us." She hesitated, then said nothing more. Lucas took a slow sip of bourbon. "Why, cleaning?" She wiped the corner of the glass table again, though it was spotless. "Because it is work. Because I do not have a degree. Because I needed something fast." Her words were simple, but the way she said them made his chest tighten. He did not want that feeling, so he let the silence settle again. She moved to the floor near him, scrubbing at a faint water stain he knew was not really there. A moment later, she knocked over the small potted plant beside the bench where he sat. Soil scattered on the polished floor. Her eyes widened in panic. "I am sorry, I will clean it. Please do not call my supervisor." She dropped to her knees, scooping soil back into the pot with trembling fingers. Lucas set his glass down, watching her small hands shake as she pressed the dirt back into place. He crouched down without thinking, his expensive trousers brushing against spilled soil. "Stop. It is just a plant." Her hands froze. Her head bowed lower. "I am really sorry." He reached out, his fingers brushing hers, cold against warm skin. For a heartbeat, everything stilled, her breath caught in her throat. He felt it in his own chest, an ache he did not understand. Carefully, he helped her gather the last bits of soil. When they both stood, her eyes did not quite meet his. She clutched the empty soil bag to her chest like a shield. Lucas found his voice. "Next time, leave it. I will replace it." She nodded quickly, pushing the cart back toward the hallway. "Good night, Mr. Maddox." She always said his name like it cost her something. He watched her go, the faint scent of cheap soap and floor cleaner lingering long after she vanished down the service hall. The next day, Lucas sat in a boardroom full of men in tailored suits talking about container routes, fuel costs, and supply chain delays. He stared out the glass wall behind them, the ocean stretching somewhere far beyond the skyscrapers. His mind drifted. He pictured soil on polished marble, a soft apology, a girl clutching broken dirt like it was all she owned. Someone called his name 3 times before he turned back. That evening, Isabella returned. She did not expect him to be there, but he was, leaning against the kitchen island this time, tie loose, hair slightly damp like he had just showered. She paused at the door, debating if she should step back, but he gestured for her to enter. She set down her bag, unpacked her supplies. He did not speak, just watched. After a while, she could not stand the silence. "You do not have to stay here while I work." Her voice was careful, polite. Lucas arched a brow. "Maybe I like to see my money being well spent." A half-smile tugged at her mouth, though she tried to hide it. She did not answer him. She moved to the windows, spraying cleaner on the glass that already gleamed. He stepped closer, not enough to touch, just enough to watch her reflection. "Why do you look so scared all the time?" His voice was low but steady. Isabella's hand stilled on the cloth. "I am not scared," she lied without looking at him. "You flinch when people get too close. You look at the floor when you speak." He stepped closer until he could see her lashes flutter. I am not like the people you have known before, Isabella. She swallowed hard, her fingers tightened around the rag. I do not want trouble here, Mr. Maddox. He almost laughed. Trouble? He repeated the word slowly, like tasting it. Do you think you are trouble? She did not answer. The silence pressed closer than his body ever did. She kept wiping until her knuckles turned red. He caught her wrist, gentle but firm, forcing her to stop. She looked up, eyes wide, breathing shallow. You can breathe, he said. It is just glass. It will still be dirty tomorrow. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. He let go of her wrist, his fingertips brushing her skin like a question. She stepped back, putting space between them again. Good night, Mr. Maddox. She slipped out before he could say another word. Lucas spent that night pacing his penthouse like it was a cage. He poured a second glass of bourbon, then left it untouched. He read emails, answered messages, approved shipments worth millions. None of it silenced the ghost of her voice in his head, the way she had looked at him like she wanted to disappear. He opened the security feed on his phone, watched the footage of her wheeling the supply cart down the hall, the way she paused by the elevator, glanced back as if searching for something. He closed the app. Isabella did not know he was watching. She could not know how much she stayed in his mind, a small stain on a life he had kept spotless for years. She only knew she had to keep her head down, do the work, collect her paycheck. She needed to keep her mother's medicine stocked, her brother in school, her landlord quiet. She had no space left for rich men with strange eyes and questions she could not afford to answer. But life does not care about what we can afford. It only cares about what we cannot run from. And that week, Isabella learned that Lucas Maddox was not a man who let things slip away once they caught his attention. He sent for her shift schedule. He watched when she cleaned. He asked questions no one else ever asked. Who do you go home to? Do you sleep enough? Have you ever wanted more? She gave him careful answers, half-truths. He accepted them, but his eyes told her he did not believe a word. One night, she arrived to find the penthouse empty. She let out a breath she did not realize she was holding. She moved freely through the open space, humming as she dusted. She stood in front of the vast window wall, looking at the city that never waited for girls like her. She pressed her forehead to the cold glass and whispered a prayer she did not expect anyone to hear. But Lucas did. He watched from the dark corner of his study, door half closed, heart half open, for the first time in years. He should have looked away. He did not. He told himself it was harmless, but he knew deep down that nothing about her was harmless anymore. The next time she came, the rain was beating against the penthouse windows like soft drums. Isabella hated working on rainy nights, not because she minded getting wet, but because it made everything feel heavier. Her shoes squeaked more, her clothes clung to her skin. Her hair curled where it slipped from its tie. She tried to finish quickly, wiping down the stainless steel in the kitchen, polishing the glass shelves in the lounge. She did not expect him to come home early. She did not hear the elevator at first. When she turned, Lucas was standing behind her, his dark hair damp from the rain, a black coat over his arm. His eyes moved over her slowly, not in the way men sometimes looked at her on the subway, but in a way that made her feel like he was searching for pieces she did not even know she had left to hide. "You should dry your hair," he said. She blinked, caught off guard by his voice. "It's fine," she said quickly, turning back to the shelf. "I am almost done here." He stepped closer, close enough she could feel the faint heat from his body. He reached past her, took the cloth from her hand and set it on the counter. She stiffened. He did not touch her again, only stood there, eyes locked on hers. "Why are you so afraid of me, Isabella?" He asked it like he was asking about the weather, but she felt her pulse hammer in her throat. "I am not," she lied again. "You are. You jump when I speak. You shake when I stand too close." He leaned in slightly, just enough to make her breath catch. "What are you so afraid I will do?" She looked away, focusing on the polished marble under her feet. "I just want to do my job, please." Lucas studied the line of her jaw, the small tremor in her shoulders. He wondered who had made her flinch like that. He wondered why he cared. He stepped back slowly, giving her the space she seemed to beg for without saying it. "You should dry your hair," he repeated. She did not move until he turned away and disappeared into his study. She stood there for a long moment, staring at her reflection in the glass, wondering what he saw that she could not hide. Later that night, she found a clean white towel folded neatly on her cart when she went to pack up her supplies. She knew he had left it there. She almost left it behind, but in the end she pressed it to her face and felt warmth she did not want to feel. She carried it home, tucked deep in her bag like a secret. Lucas could not explain to himself why he did it. He should have been on calls with Tokyo, signing off on new shipping routes. But instead he sat in his office, watching the security feed, tracking the slow movements of a girl who refused to look him in the eye for more than a second. He told himself he was only protecting his property, his privacy, but that was a lie, and he knew it. The next day, he called his assistant and asked for everything they could find on Isabella Cruz. He read the file 3 times, each line cutting sharper than the last. No father listed on her papers. Mother, Maria Cruz, diagnosed with congestive heart failure. Brother, Mateo, 10 years old, top of his class, lunch program at school, late tuition payments noted. Isabella had no college degree, dropped out halfway through a nursing program when her mother got sick again, worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, never stable, always under the table. There was no one protecting her. No one except herself. Lucas sat back in his chair, file open on his desk, the city stretching below him like a kingdom he had conquered. He ran the tip of his pen over the line that said, "No criminal record," as if that could explain why she flinched every time a man raised his voice near her. He closed the file, but the facts stayed, stubborn as the rain tapping on his window. That night, Isabella arrived to find a strange quiet in the penthouse. The lights were dim, the main room empty. She moved carefully through the lounge, wiping down the tables and shelves, her breath fogging the cold glass as she leaned close to clean. She did not know he was behind her until she heard his voice, softer than usual. "Do you sing when you clean other houses too?" She almost dropped the cloth. She turned slowly, finding him leaning against the marble island, sleeves rolled to his elbows, tie gone. "No," she said carefully, "I do not sing." He lifted a brow. "I hear you." She looked down at her hands. "It is not singing, it is just habit." He pushed off the counter, walking closer. "It sounds like a lullaby." She shifted back until her hip bumped the edge of the counter. "It is something my mother used to hum when I was little, when she worked nights." Lucas stopped within reach, close enough that she could see the faint scar near his temple, the one no camera ever caught because he knew how to hide it under perfect haircuts and expensive shadows. "You never answer my questions, Isabella." He said it like a man confessing a sin. She forced a small smile. "Maybe you ask too many." He almost smiled back. Almost. "Tell me something real," he said quietly. "Tell me something you do not tell the agency or your supervisor or the other maids. Tell me something that is yours." Her throat worked as she swallowed. She thought about lying, about saying nothing, about brushing past him like a breeze, but she did not. "My mother thinks I am still in school." She whispered it like a crime. "She thinks I go to class all day and study all night. She does not know I scrub other people's floors for $12 an hour." Lucas felt something crack inside his chest. Why not tell her? "Because she will stop fighting, and I need her to fight." He did not touch her, but she felt the heat of his body, the weight of his silence. "I am sorry," he said. She almost laughed. "Do not be. It is not your fault." She stepped around him, careful not to brush his sleeve, and vanished into the hallway with her cart. Lucas stood there for a long time, her confession like a ghost in his head. He did not sleep that night. Instead, he watched the city drown in rain, and wondered when he had started to care about a girl who would never ask him for anything except space. The next morning he made a call he should not have made. He wired an anonymous payment to the hospital that held Maria Cruz's growing debt. He told himself it was charity, just a gesture to clear his conscience. But when Isabella showed up that night, he watched her more closely, searching her eyes for signs that she knew. She did not. She looked tired but lighter somehow, humming under her breath as she wiped fingerprints from the glass walls of his life. He wondered if he should feel guilty. He did not. He only felt that same tight pull in his chest every time she looked away too quickly, every time she flinched at the sound of his footsteps, every time her small voice pressed against the silence he had wrapped himself in for so long. He told himself this was still harmless, but they both knew it was not. Lucas thought he had control. He thought if he kept his distance and buried himself in work and numbers and shipyard meetings, he could suffocate whatever was growing between them before it became something he could not live without. But control was a lie, and the lie cracked the night he saw her crying in his hallway. Isabella had arrived early, hoping to finish before the storm got worse outside. She did not know Lucas had come home unexpectedly, that he was in his study reviewing security footage from the docks. He heard a small sound, softer than the rain, softer than the hum of the penthouse air system. He found her sitting on the floor near the staff supply closet, her head buried in her arms, shoulders trembling. She did not hear him at first. He stood a few steps away, frozen, watching her chest hitch with each silent sob. Something inside him turned raw, an old wound torn open by a sight so small yet so violent in its quiet pain. He should have left her there, given her privacy she clearly wanted, but he did not. He stepped closer, his shoes silent on the marble. "Isabella." Her head snapped up. She scrambled to her feet so quickly she almost lost her balance. Her eyes were wet, but she wiped at them with the back of her wrist like a child caught misbehaving. "I am sorry. I did not mean—" She could not finish. He could see her throat work, her breath stuttering. "What happened, Isabella?" His voice was softer than he had ever heard it come out. She shook her head. "Nothing. It is nothing. Please. I will finish cleaning. I just needed a minute." Lucas reached out, stopped himself when he saw her flinch. He lowered his hand. "Talk to me." She laughed, but it cracked in the middle. "You want me to talk? Fine." "They called today, the school. They said my brother cannot stay unless I pay by Friday. I do not have it. I never have enough." She looked away, biting her lip to stop it from trembling. Her hair clung to her wet cheeks. She whispered so low he almost missed it. "And I know you do not want my problems in your house. I will not cry again, I promise." Lucas felt something old and cold inside him split. He wanted to say the money was nothing, that he could fix it with one call. But the way she stood there, spine stiff with shame, made him swallow those words. Instead, he stepped aside, gesturing toward the kitchen. "Come here." She hesitated but followed him, wiping her eyes with the hem of her sleeve. He poured her a glass of water, set it on the counter. "Sit." She perched on the edge of a stool like she might bolt any second. He leaned against the opposite counter, arms crossed, studying the small girl in a uniform too big for her, her shoulders curled as if bracing for an invisible blow. "You do not have to carry everything alone, Isabella." She looked up sharply, her eyes glassy. "Yes, I do." He wanted to tell her he understood. He wanted to tell her about nights when he was 10 years old, hiding in a dark room while his father smashed whiskey bottles against the walls, about how he learned to never need anyone so they could never be used against him. But he said none of it. He only watched her, realizing too late that this was no longer harmless. She stood quickly, the stool scraping the floor. "I need to work. I cannot stand here doing nothing." He did not stop her. He only followed as she cleaned, his eyes tracing her every movement, the small tremor in her hands, the way she kept her head down like she could disappear if she just stayed small enough. The next day, Lucas made the payment to the school. He told himself he did not expect her to find out, but when she did, she came storming into the penthouse 2 nights later, breathless, her hair damp from the rain. He was in the lounge, talking to a junior manager about port security. She did not care that someone else was there. She marched right up to him, voice shaking. "Did you pay my brother's school?" The manager stared, wide-eyed. Lucas dismissed him with a flick of his hand. The man vanished down the hall. Isabella's hands were clenched at her sides. "Answer me. Did you do it?" Lucas stayed calm. "Yes." Her breath hitched. "Why?" He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Because you needed help and you would never ask." Her eyes shone with tears she refused to let fall. "You had no right." He felt anger flicker, quick and sharp. "I have every right to protect what is mine." The words slipped out before he could stop them. She flinched like he had struck her. "I am not yours." Her voice was small, but the fury in it made something in him recoil. She turned to leave, but he caught her wrist, not hard, just enough to stop her. She froze under his touch, her pulse wild under his fingers. He forced his voice steady. "Then tell me. You do not want my help. Tell me you want to do this alone. Tell me, and I will never lift a finger for you again." She wrenched her arm free, stepping back until her spine hit the cold glass wall. "I do not want your help if it comes with strings. I will not owe you." Lucas stepped forward, closing the space she was desperate to keep. "You already do." Her eyes widened. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. The city lights flickered behind the storm outside. He saw it then, a glint of something raw and fragile under all her stubbornness. She was not afraid of him hurting her body. She was afraid of him owning what little she still had left untouched. He exhaled. He stepped back. "Fine. If you want out, say it." She did not say it. She just turned and walked away, shoulders stiff, back straight, eyes dry but shining like broken glass. Lucas watched her go and realized that for the first time in a long time, he had no idea how to win. He stayed up all night after that. The next day, he canceled meetings, ignored calls from board members asking why he was missing briefings. He told himself he was busy, that there were bigger problems to solve, but his mind stayed stuck on the echo of her voice, the way she had said, "I am not yours," like it was a threat and a promise. He thought he could let it die there, but a man who has built empires by never giving up does not know how to walk away. So when Isabella did not come for her next shift, he called the agency. They said she had asked for a transfer to a different client. Lucas hung up without a word. The same night, he was in his car, driving through rain to a neighborhood he had no business visiting. He found her building by memory, the address burned into his mind from the file he had read too many times. He waited in his car until he saw her figure under a broken street lamp, her coat pulled tight, an umbrella doing nothing against the wind. He got out before he could talk himself down. Isabella froze when she saw him. She clutched her bag tighter. "What are you doing here?" Her voice cracked at the edges, too tired to hide the fear. He stepped closer, but left space this time. "I came to talk." She shook her head. "There is nothing to say. I quit." He felt his jaw tighten. "Then lie to me. Tell me you never think about coming back. Tell me you want to clean other people's floors instead of mine. Tell me I do not matter." Her breath hitched. She looked at him like he was a storm she could not outrun. She whispered it so low he almost missed it. "You do not matter." But her eyes betrayed her. He stepped closer, his voice low enough that the rain almost swallowed it. "I matter. You know I do." She turned her face away, but he could see her throat move. A silent surrender. In the end, she let him stand there with her in the rain. Neither said another word. When he finally stepped back, she did not follow him, but she did not tell him to leave either. And for Lucas Maddox, a man who never waited for anything, that was enough to know he was already too far gone to stop now. Isabella did not come to the penthouse for 2 nights after that rain. Lucas told himself he would give her space, that he could wait, that he had waited his whole life to not feel chained to anything, so he could surely wait for a maid who wanted nothing to do with his money or his name. But waiting tasted like rust in his mouth. The second night, he sat alone in the rooftop solarium, the glass walls dripping with cold mist, the city alive beneath him, but none of it reaching where he sat. He knew she would come back. He knew, because he could feel her absence like a bruise under his ribs. And he was right. On the third night, her name reappeared on the staff log. He heard the soft squeak of the supply cart wheels in the hallway before he saw her. He stayed where he was, hidden behind a row of tall indoor palms. He watched her slip off her coat, tug her hair into that loose knot she never fixed properly. She looked thinner, more tired than he remembered. He wondered if he looked the same to her. Isabella did not know he was there when she stepped into the rooftop solarium to water the plants. The task was not hers, but she did it anyway because it was easier to keep her hands busy. Her fingers trembled when she misted the orchids near the back wall. She hated how her heart raced when she thought she might see him again. She hated more how part of her wanted him to appear, to say something reckless just to remind her that someone saw her in a world that mostly walked past. When she turned and found him watching, she almost dropped the spray bottle. Lucas did not move. Neither did she. He said nothing at first, only let the silence wrap around them until it felt like its own language. She broke it first, her voice low and tired. "You should not be here." He tilted his head. "This is my house." She looked down, her fingers tightening around the bottle. "Then you should not be here with me." He stepped closer, slow enough that she could have stopped him with one word. She did not. When he was close enough to touch her but did not, she held her breath. Lucas's eyes traced her face like he was memorizing something he was not sure he would be allowed to keep. "Why do you run from me?" She let out a small, bitter laugh. "I do not run, I clean. And when that does not work, I leave." He wanted to touch her so badly his hands shook. Instead, he asked the question that had been clawing at him for weeks. "Why do you flinch every time I stand too close?" She tried to look away, but he caught her chin gently, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Tell me the truth, Isabella. Please." Her eyes brimmed with something like fear and something like shame. She swallowed hard, words scraping her throat. "Because no one has ever stood this close without wanting something." He blinked. "What do you think I want?" She pulled back, out of his light hold, wrapping her arms around herself. "I do not know. That is the problem." Lucas's voice dropped lower. "Tell me what you think I want." She pressed her lips together so tightly the color drained from them. When she spoke, her words were so small they almost vanished in the hum of the city beyond the glass. "You want to own me, like everything else you touch. You want to fix things that are not yours to fix." He should have denied it, but he did not, because part of him knew it was true. He stepped closer again, reckless now, driven by something dark and hot under his skin. His words spilled out before he could stop them. "You think I want to own you. You think I paid your mother's debt, your brother's school, just so you would owe me your skin." Her breath caught. He lowered his voice until it was a growl. "Do you know how many women would beg for that?" Her eyes widened, glassy, horrified, and then, softer than before, she whispered, "But I am not them. I have nothing to trade." "You have everything I have ever wanted," he said, "and you do not even know it." She shook her head. "You do not know me." He stepped closer, close enough that he could feel the faint shiver of her breath when she spoke. "Then tell me, Isabella. Tell me what I do not know." She squeezed her eyes shut like the truth might burn them out. "I have never been with anyone. Not like that, not ever." She said it fast, almost angry at herself for saying it at all. Lucas froze. The heat that had been simmering in his veins turned to ice. He searched her face, looking for a lie, but there was none. He saw it now, all the moments that made sense at once, the way she recoiled from his touch, the way she looked at the floor when he stood too close. He felt his pulse pound in his neck, too loud, too heavy. Isabella opened her eyes slowly. "There," she said, her voice flat and small. "Now you know. Now you can be disgusted or amused, or whatever men like you feel when they find out they cannot buy everything." Lucas did not laugh. He did not move. He felt something dark and hungry twist in his gut. He reached for her, then stopped himself, his fingers hovering over her cheek but not daring to touch. "I am not disgusted. I am not amused." She swallowed. "Then what are you?" His voice was rough, raw. "I am lost." She flinched at that word. He let out a breath that sounded like it hurt. "I have destroyed everything I have ever touched, is ships, deals, men twice my age. I have torn down boardrooms and built them again in my name. But you stand here and I do not know what to do with you." She stepped back, shaking her head. "You do nothing. You stay away. I do my job, I go home. That is it." He almost agreed. He almost stepped aside and let her pass. But he was Lucas Maddox, a man who had never let anything he wanted walk away without a fight. So when she moved toward the door, he did what he had been dying to do since the moment she first looked at him with those wide, frightened eyes. He caught her wrist again, gentle but firm, and pulled her back. She gasped, the sound soft and sharp like the snap of a thread pulled too tight. He did not kiss her. He only held her there, forehead inches from hers, breathing the same damp air between them. His free hand hovered at her jaw, careful, reverent. "I do not want your debt," he said, his voice low, shaking. "I do not want your thanks. I do not want your body like a thing to be claimed." "Then what do you want?" she whispered, breathless, terrified, desperate. He touched her jaw then, his thumb brushing the damp skin under her eye. "I want you to look at me the way you look at things you think are worth saving." A sound escaped her throat, half sob, half laugh. "You are not something I can save, Lucas." He smiled, but it was broken. "I know, but I think you are the only person in this entire city who could try." His hand fell away slowly. He let her go because she needed him to, but the truth hung in the air like static. She backed away, pulse wild in her throat. When she reached the door, she turned to him one last time. "Do not do this to me. Do not make me care." He watched her leave, feeling the wreckage settle in his chest. In that moment, Lucas Maddox, the man who never lost control, knew he had already lost everything he thought made him untouchable, and he did not want it back. Lucas did not see her for 2 days after that night in the solarium. He told himself to let her go, to let it all fade the way he had buried everything else that ever threatened his control. But this was different. The silence she left behind felt bigger than the penthouse walls, bigger than the city pulsing outside his windows. He thought he could bury the ache under meetings, mergers, strategy calls, but her voice lingered in the cracks of his mind like a song he could not turn off. On the third night, he came home late from a board dinner. The penthouse was dark except for the soft glow of the rooftop garden lights. He almost turned away, almost walked past the solarium door, but instinct pulled him there. Isabella was sitting alone on the wooden bench under the glass canopy, knees pulled to her chest, her uniform jacket draped around her shoulders. She did not hear him at first. When she looked up and saw him, her eyes did not widen in fear this time. They looked tired, yes, but not afraid. He stepped inside, careful not to break whatever fragile thread held this moment together. She did not stand or move away. She just watched him like she was deciding if she would let him speak. He did not sit. He stood in front of her, hands in his pockets, because if he touched her now, he might never stop. "Say it," she whispered. "Whatever you came here to say it now so I can know what to do with you." Lucas let out a quiet breath. "I do not know how to love you the right way. Not yet. I do not know how to fix the parts of me that want to own everything I care about just so no one else can take it. I do not have promises. I do not have pretty words. I just have this. He gestured to himself. The man who had spent years bearing every part that could be used against him. Isabella's voice trembled. Then why come here? Why not let me leave? He took a step closer, the glass roof above them catching the faint hue of city lights. Because I have built everything in my life to protect what I want. And this time, what I want does not want to be owned. It wants to be free enough to stay. That terrifies me more than anything. She closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were wet but steady. I do not need saving, Lucas. I do not want a prince. He gave a small broken laugh. Good, because I am no prince. I am just a man who wants you to stay because you choose to, not because I pay your debts or fix your problems or buy your freedom like another transaction. He knelt in front of her then, his hands resting on the edge of the bench but not touching her. Let me make room for you in a world that never made room for you. Let me learn how. Her fingers reached for his then, so small and hesitant. When they touched, it felt less like surrender and more like choosing. She whispered, soft but fierce, Then let it be real, Lucas. No locks, no secrets, no debts. He nodded. No debts. He lifted her hand to his lips, but did not kiss it. He just held it there, feeling her pulse steady under his mouth, a promise that he would never be the storm that broke her open. Outside the glass walls, the city kept moving, restless and hungry, but inside, for once, it was quiet enough for both of them to hear the truth that had always waited in the silence. Sometimes love is not about saving or owning. Sometimes it is just about staying, and that was enough.